Dr. Elena Reyes rubbed her eyes, the blue glow of monitors casting stark shadows across her face at 3:17 a.m. The Institute's quantum computing lab was silent except for the soft hum of cooling systems and the occasional beep from her equipment. This was her preferred time to work, when bureaucracy slept and pure science could breathe. Final calibration sequence running. She muttered to herself, sipping cold coffee while reviewing the entanglement experiment's parameters. The test was routine. She'd run similar ones dozens of times, measuring quantum correlations between entangled particles. The department head had threatened to cut her funding if she didn't produce actionable results soon, whatever that meant in theoretical physics. The quantum processor hummed to life, its super-cooled heart maintaining perfect quantum coherence. Elena watched the familiar patterns form on her monitor, wave functions collapsing predictably, probability distributions following expected bell curves. Then everything changed. The monitor flickered, numbers skittering across the screen in impossible sequences. Elena leaned forward, coffee forgotten. Particles weren't just existing in superposition. They were occupying 17 distinct quantum states simultaneously. Not 2, not 3, 17. "That's impossible," she whispered, fingers flying across the keyboard, cross-checking equipment calibrations. Everything functioned perfectly. Yet the readings defied every principle of quantum mechanics she'd built her career upon. For 3 minutes and 42 seconds, the anomaly persisted. Then the system crashed, screens going dark before rebooting. Before the final flicker, a single equation flashed across her primary monitor. Complex, beautiful, and entirely foreign to human mathematics. By morning, Elena's excitement met a wall of skepticism. You were alone, at 3 a.m., running an unauthorized extension of your scheduled lab time. Dr. Harrison, the department chair, said with barely concealed disdain. And you conveniently have no recordings because the system crashed. I'm telling you, the particles exhibited multi-dimensional superposition beyond anything in our models, Elena insisted, pushing her hastily compiled notes across the conference table. We need to modify the equipment to capture it properly next time. Her colleagues exchanged uncomfortable glances. Elena, when was the last time you took a vacation? Dr. Myers asked gently. You've been working 70-hour weeks since the divorce. This isn't sleep deprivation. Elena snapped, snatching back her notes. Fine. I'll prove it. That night marked the beginning of Elena's obsession. She reprogrammed the Institute's quantum computer with unauthorized modifications, adding specialized sensors capable of detecting quantum fluctuations outside standard models. For 3 nights, nothing happened. On the 4th night, the anomaly returned. This time, she was ready. Enhanced sensors captured what conventional equipment couldn't, quantum states appearing to communicate across vast distances instantaneously, patterns forming and dissolving like a cosmic conversation. Her triumph was short-lived. The following morning, she missed a crucial presentation to university donors while analyzing her data. By afternoon, she'd been suspended pending review. Your behavior is becoming erratic, Elena, the dean explained with practiced sympathy. Take some time off. Get some perspective. 36 hours later, Elena's apartment had transformed into a makeshift laboratory. She'd sold her car, emptied her savings, and called in every favor from former graduate students to piece together equipment that could detect the anomalies. Her academic reputation lay in ruins, but something far more important had taken its place: certainty. The patterns weren't random. Hidden within the quantum fluctuations were mathematical sequences, prime number ratios, geometric progressions, and complex fractals that couldn't possibly occur naturally. Someone, or something, was reaching out from across the quantum field. A freak solar storm 3 weeks later provided the breakthrough. The quantum signals intensified during the geomagnetic disturbance, becoming clear enough that Elena's homemade equipment could finally decode portions of the pattern. Her hands trembled as the translation algorithm completed its work, rendering meaning from quantum noise. The message appeared on her cracked tablet screen. We see you watching. You alone hear our whispers. The others are deaf to the quantum chorus." Elena stared at the words, heart pounding. After a lifetime believing in scientific rationality, she faced an undeniable truth. Humanity was not alone in the quantum realm. And somehow, they had chosen her to hear them first. Elena woke with a gasp, momentarily disoriented. Her apartment looked wrong. Shadows bent at impossible angles, light refracted into visible quantum states, and the coffee mug on her nightstand appeared to exist in 3 places simultaneously. She pinched herself, convinced she was dreaming. "Your brain is interpreting quantum fluctuations through sensory organs evolved for classical physics," said a voice that wasn't quite a voice, more like mathematics translating directly into thought. "The discomfort will pass as your neural pathways adapt." From the rippling air emerged a shimmering, ever-shifting form, geometric patterns folding inward and outward through dimensions Elena's eyes couldn't fully process. It resembled a crystalline octopus composed of living equations, constantly recalculating itself. "I am Axiom, emissary of those you might call the entanglers," the entity communicated, its voice bypassing her ears and appearing directly in her consciousness. "We exist within the quantum foam underlying reality, perceiving existence through entangled particles rather than matter." Elena reached for her tablet, hands trembling. "I need to record this. Your devices cannot perceive me accurately," Axiom replied. "But if validation is required," the entity gestured toward Elena's whiteboard. Mathematical formulae appeared in glowing script, 3 unsolvable quantum equations that had frustrated physicists for decades. Then, step by step, elegant solutions unfolded across the board. "The Raymond-Schrödinger paradox," Elena whispered, approaching the equations. "You've solved it. A trivial problem when one perceives 11 dimensions simultaneously," Axiom responded, its form pulsing with what might have been pride. Suspecting she might still be hallucinating, Elena photographed the solutions and anonymously uploaded one to an academic physics forum. Within hours, her inbox flooded with notifications as the solution went viral, crashing servers worldwide as physicists scrambled to understand its implications. "We have observed countless species across this galaxy," Axiom continued. "Most remain trapped in deterministic thinking, incapable of true quantum communication. Their technology far exceeds yours, yet their minds cannot grasp fundamental uncertainties." "And humans can?" Elena asked skeptically. "Your species embraces paradox. Your greatest physicists understood that observation shapes reality, that uncertainty isn't a measurement problem, but reality's foundation. Your philosophers questioned objective reality millennia before your science confirmed their intuitions. Even your artists and musicians capture quantum principles in works they cannot consciously explain." Elena struggled to process the entity's words. "Why contact me? Why now?" Axiom's form contracted painfully. "Because catastrophe approaches. To demonstrate, I must show you how we perceive reality. Prepare yourself. This will be disorienting." Before Elena could object, tendrils of quantum probability extended from Axiom, touching her forehead. Her consciousness exploded outward. She experienced time flowing in multiple directions simultaneously. She perceived probability clouds instead of objects. She witnessed cause and effect operating in recursive loops. She observed her own body as a complex waveform rather than solid matter. Most disturbingly, she saw Earth itself embedded in a cosmic web of quantum interconnections, with alarming distortions spreading throughout nearby space. When Elena regained normal consciousness, she was curled on the floor, speaking in mathematical equations that poured from her mouth unbidden. Gradually, human language returned. What was that?" she gasped. "Reality as we perceive it," Axiom answered. "And within it, evidence of deliberate quantum manipulation. Reality itself is unraveling in sectors throughout the galaxy, a probability cascade that will reach your solar system within 67 of your days." Elena struggled to her feet. "We need to warn people, governments, Scientists. We have tried. Axiom interrupted. The advanced species dominating your galactic neighborhood refuse our warnings. Their deterministic worldview cannot accommodate quantum threats they cannot measure with classical instruments. They dismiss us as delusional parasites feeding on quantum fluctuations. The entity's form brightened suddenly. But you heard us. Humanity's comfort with uncertainty and quantum paradoxes makes you uniquely receptive. Your species may be the galaxy's only hope against what approaches. What could humans possibly do that advanced alien civilizations cannot? Alina asked. Axiom's form reconfigured into a complex pattern that somehow conveyed both urgency and hope. Accept that consciousness shapes reality. Demonstrate this truth to species who have forgotten it, before the probability cascade erases everything, including the concept of having ever existed at all. No one believed Alina until the quantum disturbances began manifesting publicly. The first incident occurred during a routine experiment at Sioran. Laboratory mice momentarily evolved into 17 different species before returning to normal, all captured on high-definition security cameras. Days later, 3 patients at Johns Hopkins simultaneously existed in different locations, witnessed by dozens of medical professionals. Then came the terrifying Singapore Airlines incident. Flight SQ-322 disappeared from radar for 12 minutes before reappearing, with all 238 passengers aboard, each having experienced 3 different realities during the anomaly. Global panic ensued. Financial markets collapsed. Religious leaders proclaimed the end times. Governments deployed military forces against invisible threats. Alina was extracting groceries from her car when black SUVs surrounded her apartment complex. She barely had time to grab her tablet before special forces in unmarked tactical gear escorted her to a waiting helicopter. "Dr. Rice, your country needs you," said the stern-faced woman who introduced herself only as Director Chen. The helicopter delivered them to a fortified underground facility where representatives from 17 nations waited around a conference table. After Alina demonstrated quantum communication with Axiom, who manifested briefly, sending several generals fleeing from the room, she found herself appointed commander of Quantum Response Team Alpha. Her team comprised 7 brilliant but eccentric physicists with specialty knowledge in quantum mechanics, including former colleagues who had once mocked her discoveries. The entanglers have provided coordinates for a quantum gateway, Alina explained to her team, pointing to mathematical equations scrolling across her tablet. It's hidden within Jupiter's Great Red Spot, a quantum anomaly hiding in plain sight for centuries. The journey nearly killed them all. Their experimental spacecraft, retrofitted with quantum tunneling technology, launched from the dark side of the moon under absolute secrecy. As they approached Jupiter, the ship's navigational computer calculated 17 different positions simultaneously, causing crew members to experience multiple timelines at once. Dr. Katri vomited mathematical equations. Dr. Okafor briefly aged 80 years before reverting to normal, and Dr. Nakamura reported seeing through the hull into the space between spaces. Only Alina's quantum entangled link with Axiom stabilized the vessel enough to reach their destination. The Great Red Spot parted like a curtain, revealing a gateway that logic insisted couldn't exist. They emerged into a vast structure floating in 11-dimensional space, the Galactic Assembly. Alina's team gazed in awe at a staggering congress of species representing 10,000 civilizations from across the galaxy. Beings of pure energy floated alongside crystalline entities. Silicon-based lifeforms communicated with creatures composed of complex gases. Some entities existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, appearing as flickering shadows to human perception. Dominating the assembly physically and politically were the logicians, tall, silver-skinned humanoids with enlarged cranial capacity and expressions of perpetual calculation. For millennia, they had guided galactic development based on rigid adherence to deterministic physical laws. "The humans have arrived," announced their grandmaster, voice laden with disdain. Primitive curiosities championed by quantum parasites, Let us observe what delusions they bring. Elena's team entered the central debating floor wearing hastily designed environmental suits that struggled to compensate for the chamber's exotic atmosphere. Thousands of alien representatives observed them with reactions ranging from curiosity to contempt. "Respected assembly," Elena began, her voice amplified and translated by assembly technology. "We come as witnesses to quantum disruptions threatening all reality. The probability cascade approaches." "Unsubstantiated paranoia," interrupted the logician Grandmaster. "The parasites known as entanglers have infected your primitive minds with hallucinatory mathematics. We have observed your species for centuries. You barely understand orbital mechanics, yet presume to lecture us on quantum reality." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Elena's team exchanged worried glances. "If humans possess any remarkable quantum insight," the Grandmaster continued, "demonstrate it now before this assembly dismisses your species as an evolutionary curiosity best left on your isolated world." Elena stepped forward with sudden determination. From her pack, she withdrew a simple apparatus, a modified double-slit experiment using components from her apartment laboratory. "Grandmaster, I challenge you to explain the results of this demonstration," Elena announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My species has wrestled with the implications for over a century. Let's see if your deterministic framework can accommodate what happens when observation meets quantum reality." The assembly fell silent as the fate of multiple civilizations suddenly hinged on a physics experiment, simpler than most graduate school projects on Earth. While the assembly debated the implications of Elena's demonstration, which had sent several logician theoreticians into meditative seclusion to reconsider fundamental principles, catastrophe struck without warning. The Cygni-9 system, home to over 6 billion sentient beings and located 17 light-years from Earth, collapsed into nothingness. The assembly's vast monitoring network captured the horrifying event in real time. Planets, stars, and space itself twisted into impossible geometries, reality folding inward like crumpled paper. Matter converted to energy, energy to information, information to quantum noise, and finally, nothing. Not darkness, not emptiness. Nothing. The perfect absence that even light refused to enter. "A quantum void," Elena whispered, the term forming in her mind as she watched the recording for the third time. The assembly chamber had erupted into panic, with representatives from hundreds of worlds demanding explanations, protections, evacuations. The logicians deployed their most sophisticated computational models, artificial intelligences spanning 17 dimensions, capable of calculating quantum probabilities to a degree that would make Earth's most advanced computers seem like abacuses. Their physicist priests, silver skin now pale gray with stress, worked feverishly to analyze the phenomenon. Their models failed spectacularly. Equations collapsed into nonsense. Simulations produced impossible results. 3 logician physicist priests suffered mental breakdowns attempting to reconcile the void with their understanding of reality, their silver skin cracking as their minds fractured. "The void defies deterministic analysis," the Grandmaster admitted, approaching Elena's team with visible reluctance. "Your species' comfort with probabilistic thinking may provide the only framework capable of even approaching an explanation." Within hours, the humans established a research outpost at the void's edge, where reality itself became increasingly unstable. Basic laws of physics hiccuped unpredictably. Gravity fluctuated. Time flowed at irregular rates. Light sometimes behaved as waves, sometimes as particles, sometimes as both simultaneously, and occasionally as neither. Elena's team suffered casualties almost immediately. Dr. Katri aged 80 years in an instant, his body crumbling to dust before anyone could react. Dr. Nakamura transformed into pure mathematics, his physical form dissolving into equations that briefly hung in the air before dissipating into quantum noise. Elena herself began experiencing quantum echoes, perceiving multiple timelines simultaneously, sometimes speaking sentences she hadn't yet thought of, sometimes answering questions no one had asked. During one severe episode, where she existed in 17 distinct probability states for nearly 3 minutes, she glimpsed a pattern underlying the chaos. "The universe has natural quantum immune systems," she explained afterward, hands trembling as Dr. Okafor administered a stabilizing injection. "Mechanisms that prevent quantum uncertainty from cascading into macroscopic reality. Something is deliberately interfering with this process." To test her theory, Alina proposed a desperate technique, sending quantum-entangled probes into the void while keeping their paired particles outside to maintain a connection. The logicians calculated a 94.6% probability of catastrophic failure, but authorized the attempt with no better options available. The team constructed the probes from modified assembly technology, each containing a quantum computer entangled with an identical system at the research outpost. Alina personally programmed the sensors to detect any pattern within the quantum noise. The launch proceeded under maximum containment protocols. 6 probes entered the void, tethered to reality by quantum entanglement alone. 5 disintegrated instantly. The 6th transmitted for 3.4 seconds before its signal corrupted. Those 3.4 seconds changed everything. The readings revealed surgical precision in the quantum manipulation, deliberate alterations to fundamental force carriers, systematic disruption of quantum field cohesion, and most disturbingly, evidence of consciousness guiding the process. Someone was weaponizing quantum uncertainty itself. When they retrieved the probe's shattered remains, its memory banks contained an unexpected message encoded in human DNA sequences, a signature no alien would have chosen. "Perfection requires destruction. Your resistance will be calculated into the equation." Alina stared at the message, a chill running through her that had nothing to do with the fluctuating temperatures near the void. "They're talking to us," she whispered. "Whoever's causing this knows we're watching." And they knew humans would be the ones to understand their message. The logician Grandmaster, observing nearby, turned to Alina with an expression that might have been fear. Who would communicate through quantum destruction? Who possesses such capability and such malice? Before Alina could respond, the void pulsed, expanding 17 micrometers in all directions, a small, precise measurement, almost like someone testing a precise instrument, or taking aim. The perpetrators revealed themselves 3 days later, breaching the assembly's quantum defenses with insulting ease. One moment, Alina stood before the Emergency Council explaining her team's findings. The next, reality stuttered like a corrupted file. The massive chamber's temperature fluctuated wildly. Gravity reversed briefly. Several representatives phased in and out of existence, their screams echoing strangely as they experienced multiple realities simultaneously. When stability returned, new entities occupied the center of the assembly floor, beings of pure mathematical precision. They appeared as geometric forms constantly recalculating themselves into optimal configurations, radiating an aura of cold perfection. Their bodies were crystalline lattices that shifted between 17 different organizational patterns, each movement a calculated efficiency. "We are the probability engineers," announced the central figure, its voice manifesting directly in the minds of all present. "Your quantum investigations have drawn our attention. Most species require millennia to notice our calibration tests." In a demonstration of power, they momentarily suspended quantum laws throughout the chamber. Assembly representatives experienced horrors beyond comprehension. Some briefly ceased to exist. Others experienced every possible version of themselves simultaneously, and time flowed backward for several delegates. The logician Grandmaster's body inverted completely, his internal organs briefly visible before returning to normal. "Mere demonstrations," the engineer stated emotionlessly. "Imprecise adjustments as we calibrate our equations." Alina stepped forward despite the logicians attempting to restrain her. "You're responsible for the quantum void, for the deaths of billions." The engineer's form reconfigured, focusing its attention on Alina. "Deaths, an imprecise term. We recalculate probability. Existence becomes optimized." Through a series of mathematical projections that appeared in the air between them, The engineers explained their origin. Once biological entities who evolved beyond physical form, they had discovered the foundations of reality, the ability to manipulate the collapse of quantum wave functions, effectively choosing which version of reality manifests. Initially, we used this understanding judiciously, the engineer continued, preventing cosmic disasters, optimizing probability cascades to facilitate life. Then we recognized the fundamental inefficiency of random quantum collapse. Their goal had transformed from guardians to architects of optimized reality, calculating and enforcing a single, perfect quantum state for the entire universe. The quantum voids were merely their calibration tests, erasing imperfect regions to refine their equations. Our calculations are absolute, the engineer announced. For optimal configuration, 98.74% of existing reality, including all current life forms, must be erased and recalculated. The logicians' response proved disastrous. Their delegation approached with precise logical arguments, presenting deterministic models showing the mathematical impossibility of the engineers' claims. The engineers responded by temporarily altering the logicians' brain chemistry, causing the silver-skinned delegates to babble nonsensical equations while dancing in geometric patterns. Your deterministic models are fundamentally incapable of comprehending quantum choice, the engineer stated when the humiliating demonstration ended. You perceive reality as fixed and predetermined. This blinds you to our methods. As the assembly descended into panic, Alina experienced another quantum echo, her consciousness briefly expanding across multiple probability states. Unlike previous episodes, this one brought clarity rather than confusion. She perceived connections between quantum states, pathways through probability that the engineers were manipulating. In this moment of expanded awareness, Alina recognized something astonishing about her own species, Earth's wildly varied perspectives on reality. From quantum physics to philosophical and spiritual traditions, questioning the nature of observation and consciousness had inadvertently prepared humanity for this moment. While the logicians saw reality as fixed and determined, humans had always embraced the observer's role in shaping reality. From ancient philosophers questioning perception to quantum pioneers recognizing observation's role in wave function collapse, humans had been wrestling with the very concepts the engineers were weaponizing. You've miscalculated, Alina announced, interrupting the engineers' proclamations. Your equations fail to account for consciousness as a quantum variable, particularly human consciousness. The primary engineer's form shimmered with what might have been surprise. Explain this assertion. We humans don't just observe quantum effects, we intuitively understand them. Alina continued, gaining confidence. Our greatest scientific insights, our art, our philosophy, all recognize that reality isn't something separate from the observer. Consciousness shapes quantum outcomes in ways your equations can't predict. The engineer's form contracted slightly, recalculating. An interesting hypothesis. We will allow one standard week for demonstration before optimization proceeds. Your species may present evidence of this. Quantum consciousness. As they vanish, reality snapped back to normal, leaving the assembly in disarray. The logician Grandmaster approached Alina, his silver skin still rippling with aftereffects of quantum manipulation. You have made an extraordinary claim to extraordinarily dangerous beings, he stated. What evidence could possibly support it? Alina's eyes reflected a determination that surprised even herself. We're going to show them something they've never seen before. Reality shaped by collective quantum observation. With the engineer's deadline looming. One standard week to demonstrate humanity's quantum consciousness or face universal optimization. Alina proposed a radical defense that divided the assembly. Quantum observation isn't just scientific theory, she explained to the Emergency Council. It's a fundamental force that conscious beings exert on reality itself. The engineer's power comes from controlling which quantum possibilities collapse into reality. We fight back with the same weapon, conscious observation. Alina's plan required establishing a network of quantum anchors, specially trained observers strategically positioned throughout threatened regions. These observers, understanding that their perception literally shapes reality, could theoretically stabilize quantum states against the engineer's manipulations. Mystical nonsense, proclaimed the logician delegate. You propose fighting mathematical precision with meditation. I propose fighting quantum manipulation with quantum observation, Elena countered. Your deterministic models fail because they ignore consciousness as a causal force in quantum collapse. Human quantum physicists have recognized this for over a century. With no alternatives, the assembly reluctantly approved a trial. The humans converted their research outpost into Nexus Academy, immediately beginning to train representatives from 17 species in humanity's unique perspective on quantum mechanics. The training pushed everyone to breaking points. Each morning began with Elena's team delivering lectures on quantum principles, afternoons with practical observation exercises, and evenings with philosophical discussions about consciousness and reality. They taught not just mathematics, but the philosophical comfort with paradox that makes human quantum understanding so powerful. Most alien students struggled with concepts humans had wrestled with for generations. Logical species found it nearly impossible to accept that observation affects reality rather than merely measuring it. Hive mind species couldn't grasp individual observation perspectives. Silicon-based crystalline entities experienced something akin to religious crisis when attempting to internalize uncertainty principles. 6 quit the program. 17 others suffered psychological breakdowns. The logician scientist attempted suicide after successfully performing a quantum observation exercise that contradicted their species' 1,000-year understanding of reality. Elena herself collapsed from exhaustion on the 5th day, experiencing intense visions where she communicated directly with quantum fields. Dr. Okafor found her unconscious, surrounded by equations she had scrawled across the floor in her own blood. Equations that, impossibly, predicted quantum fluctuations hours before they occurred. With mere hours before the engineer's deadline, Elena's team deployed the first quantum anchor network around a small moon predicted to be the engineer's next target. 17 graduates from the Nexus Academy positioned themselves in a geometric pattern, each equipped with specialized consciousness amplification technology developed by merging human theoretical models with assembly engineering. The untested defense faced immediate trial when the engineers began their optimization process on schedule. Reality around the moon fluctuated wildly. Matter phased between states, probability cascades rippled through space-time. The moon itself briefly existed in 3 different orbital positions simultaneously. But it held. The coordinated observation of the trained anchors successfully maintained quantum stability, preserving the region against all predictions. The engineers' calculations had failed to account for conscious observation as a counterforce to their manipulations. Monitoring from the academy, Elena allowed herself a moment of hope, quickly shattered as alarms blared throughout the facility. The engineers, infuriated by this unexpected resistance, launched a direct attack on the human outposts. Quantum storms materialized around the academy, temporarily shredding reality. Emergency shelters designed to withstand supernovas crumpled under quantum fluctuations. Life support systems malfunctioned as oxygen molecules randomly rearranged their quantum states. The Academy's protective shields flickered as the fundamental forces they relied upon became unreliable. They'd never been challenged before, gasped Dr. Okafor as they braced against gravity fluctuations that sent equipment flying across the laboratory. We've provoked them. Elena watched the engineers' attack patterns on surviving monitors, a desperate plan forming in her mind. Unlike their precise optimization processes, this attack displayed distinct emotional qualities, the mathematical equivalent of rage, frustration, and perhaps fear. They're breaking their own rules, Elena realized. Their perfect calculation algorithms are compromised by what could only be described as anger. They're becoming emotionally entangled with us. As emergency power failed and oxygen began venting into space, Elena made a desperate gamble, using herself as quantum bait to draw the engineers into a trap of her own design. "Calculate this," she whispered, activating the modified quantum entanglement device implanted in her chest. Her consciousness expanded outward, deliberately creating a quantum anomaly centered on herself, one structured to entangle with the engineer's own quantum systems. She became a living paradox, simultaneously extending an invitation and setting a trap for entities that had never known defeat. The engineers' counterattack exceeded everyone's worst fears. Abandoning calculated precision for overwhelming force, they deployed what could only be described as quantum weaponry, technology that forced superpositions on massive scales, placing entire regions of space in multiple contradictory states simultaneously. The effects were catastrophic. Planets existed and didn't exist concurrently. Stars burned with both nuclear fusion and antimatter annihilation. Space itself became simultaneously vacuum and solid matter. Billions of sentient beings experienced their bodies trying to occupy multiple quantum states at once, an agony beyond comprehension as their physical forms flickered between existence and nothingness. The assembly fell into chaos when the logicians' homeworld fractured into 5 overlapping realities. Their vast computational networks, the pride of galactic civilization, calculated 5 mutually exclusive outcomes simultaneously, producing paradoxical results that cascaded through connected systems. The logicians, for the first time in their recorded history, had no response, no contingency, no algorithm to address existential uncertainty. Calculating this would be the moment of greatest disarray. The engineers launched their ultimate weapon against Earth, attempting to force the entire planet into a superposition where humanity both existed and never evolved at all. On Earth, reality began flickering between states. People phased between existence and nothingness. Historical events rewrote themselves moment by moment. Continents shifted position. The quantum disruption manifested as a visible aurora of impossible colors spreading across the planet, a wave of unreality consuming everything it touched. Deep in quantum communication with the entanglers, Alina experienced a revelation that transcended conventional understanding. Floating in a state between consciousness and quantum probability, she perceived the engineers' fundamental miscalculation. They assumed consciousness follows the same quantum rules as matter. They'd built their entire paradigm on controlling wave function collapse. She communicated to what remained of her team. But they've missed something humans have intuited for millennia. Consciousness itself creates a quantum preference that helps determine which possibilities collapse into reality. Drawing on centuries of human thought experiments about quantum observation paradoxes, Alina broadcast a desperate plan to all trained quantum anchors, a synchronized global meditation focused on a single quantum outcome, stable reality. Remarkably, untrained humans worldwide intuitively joined the effort. Children, sensing reality's instability, naturally focused their attention on making the world stay still. Religious groups, interpreting events through spiritual frameworks, engaged in mass prayer. Scientists, understanding the quantum principles at work, consciously directed their observation toward wave function stability. Through quantum entanglement techniques learned from the entanglers, human consciousness across the galaxy synchronized, creating a consensus reality strong enough to begin collapsing the engineer-created superpositions back into stable states. The engineers responded by intensifying their attack, forcing deeper quantum uncertainty. Reality flickered more violently. Probability cascades threatened to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. In desperation, Alina took the ultimate risk, directly interfacing her consciousness with the quantum field through technology the entanglers had helped develop. "I am observation," she broadcasted through quantum channels to every human and trained anchor. "I am the collapse point. Join with me." Her consciousness expanded exponentially, becoming a quantum nexus where billions of observations converge. Each human mind added to the effect, creating a cascading wave of quantum state collapses that counteracted the engineers' manipulations. In a spectacular reversal, the very quantum uncertainty the engineers weaponized became their downfall. The massive surge of synchronized human observation, amplified by trained quantum anchors, created a cascading wave of quantum state collapses that not only stabilized Earth, but backflowed through the engineers' own quantum manipulations, disrupting their carefully calculated perfect state. For the first time in their existence, the engineers experienced quantum uncertainty within their own consciousness. Their perfect geometric forms wavered, calculations faltered, and mathematical precision gave way to probability clouds. The sensation was so alien, so fundamentally disturbing to their nature, that several engineers immediately ceased to exist, their consciousness unable to reconcile the concept of uncertainty with their identity. The primary engineer, its form fluctuating between 17 different probability states, addressed Elena directly across quantum channels. Impossible, it communicated, mathematical precision giving way to something resembling emotion. Your crude consciousness cannot override our calculations. That's exactly what you've never understood, Elena responded, her voice echoing strangely as it propagated through quantum fields rather than air. Consciousness isn't subject to calculation. Observation shapes reality, not the other way around. We don't just accept quantum uncertainty, we thrive within it. As the engineers struggled against the wave of human-driven quantum collapse, Elena witnessed something unprecedented. Their perfect geometric forms developing inconsistencies, their mathematical certainty fracturing, their consciousness experiencing doubt for the first time in their existence. The battle had only just begun, but for the first time since the crisis started, humanity had hope. The aftermath transformed galactic civilization. The engineers, experiencing uncertainty for the first time, fragmented into competing factions, some seeking redemption, others retreating to isolated regions to recalculate their approach. Their once perfect unity shattered by the introduction of quantum doubt into their consciousness, they could no longer reach consensus on the optimal configuration of reality. The quantum distortions stabilized but left permanent changes. Regions where physical laws operated differently, planets that existed in quantum harmony with their inhabitants' consciousness, and rifts in space-time that connected previously separate parts of the galaxy. What had once been a relatively uniform universe became a tapestry of quantum variations, less predictable, but vastly more vibrant. The logicians, utterly humbled by the limitations of their deterministic worldview, formally requested humanity's guidance in establishing new approaches to understanding reality. Their vast computational networks, once dedicated to calculating deterministic outcomes, were repurposed to model quantum probabilities in partnership with human intuition. For millennia, we believed we understood the universe, the Grandmaster admitted to Elena during the historic Reconstruction Conference. We built our civilization on mathematical certainty, yet faced with quantum reality, our perfect logic failed while your species' comfort with uncertainty prevailed. The entanglers finally revealed their full history. They had watched humanity since our earliest quantum experiments, recognizing that human consciousness interacts with quantum reality in unique ways. Our art, music, literature, philosophy, and even spiritual practices all reflected an intuitive understanding of quantum principles millennia before we developed the science to measure them. You created quantum physics twice, the entangler axiom explained to Elena. First through intuition expressed in your arts and philosophies, then through scientific observation. Both paths reached the same understanding. Reality emerges from the dialogue between consciousness and possibility. At a historic assembly gathering, Elena, now permanently altered by her quantum experiences, occasionally shifting between different possible versions of herself, established the Quantum Nexus Accord. Under this agreement, humans became known throughout the galaxy as quantum custodians, maintaining the delicate balance between deterministic physics and quantum possibility. Training centers spread across thousands of worlds, where human instructors taught other species not just quantum mathematics, but humanity's unique perspective on uncertainty, possibility, and the role of consciousness in reality. Earth became a center for galactic pilgrimages, with aliens studying everything from quantum physics laboratories to meditation retreats, ancient philosophical texts to children's imaginative play, all containing pieces of humanity's unique quantum perspective. Not all welcomed this new order. Deterministic species struggled with the inherent uncertainty of quantum reality. Some civilizations refused human teachers, preferring the comfort of classical physics even as quantum anomalies became more common throughout the galaxy. Others embraced the change too enthusiastically, creating dangerous quantum instabilities through undisciplined consciousness experiments. Maintaining balance fell to Alina and her growing network of quantum anchors, individuals specially trained to perceive and stabilize quantum fluctuations. They became a new kind of peacekeeping force, addressing quantum disruptions before they cascaded into reality-threatening events. Alina herself underwent the most profound transformation. Her consciousness, permanently entangled with quantum fields after the battle with the engineers, now simultaneously existed in multiple quantum states that allowed her to perceive reality more like the entanglers. She experienced time non-linearly, occasionally answering questions before they were asked or solving problems before they emerged. 1 year after the Battle of Superpositions, Alina addressed the largest assembly gathering in galactic history. Billions watched as this once obscure human physicist explained the new understanding of reality. The universe isn't a perfect machine following immutable laws, she began, her form occasionally shifting between probability states as she spoke. It's a conversation between consciousness and possibility, between observation and uncertainty. Reality emerges from this dialogue. As she continued, assembly representatives witnessed a remarkable demonstration. The room itself responded to their collective consciousness, quantum fluctuations visibly manifesting around them in harmonious patterns that reflected their combined awareness. We humans have always known this intuitively, that reality is stranger than we can comprehend, that contradictions can coexist, that the act of questioning shapes what we discover. Alina concluded, her voice resonating with quantum harmonics that touched each listener's consciousness directly. This acceptance of mystery, rather than denial of it, is the beginning of true understanding. The Logician Grandmaster, his silver skin now etched with fractal patterns representing his species' new comfort with uncertainty, stepped forward to formally recognize Alina as the first quantum custodian. As he placed the symbolic quantum crystal in her hands, it responded to her consciousness, glowing with inner light that pulsed in rhythm with her thoughts. The age of quantum cooperation had begun, with humanity, once thought primitive, revealed as the species that bridges the gap between consciousness and the quantum foundation of all existence.